have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. My name is Adrian Hernandez. I am here today with Ezra Parter, Jackie K, Brennan Vogt, Evan Liu, the usual suspects talking Colorado Avalanche long beyond when maybe they should be talked about anymore. But you know what? It's kind of what we do around here. So let's just get right into let's rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak. All right. This episode is bound to get a little heated. It's bound to be a little bit awkward with the Avalanche losing in Game 7 to the Dallas Stars yet again. I believe that is the fourth time. Dallas won 4-2 on the back of an absolutely quote from the ESPN, or I believe whatever national broadcast, legendary performance from former Avalanche Mikko Rantanen. So there's the salt on the wound, which we've all been, nursing for almost a week now. And yeah, so that happened. And we have had plenty of opinions in the buildup to this playoff. And there's some stuff that we got to air out, guys. There really is. So we're going to do that today. We're going to go through what happened with the assistant coach being let go. We're going to talk about the layers to that Mikko thing, some of the pending free agents and restricted free agents that the Avalanche will have to address. And then we'll give our State of the Union and our final thoughts on the 2024-25 season as each individuals. You'll all get the floor. So we're going to make a rule there. No interrupting, because I'm sure we're going to get some takes, so everyone's going to have their time and get the floor. So today is about, cleaning out the closet, so to speak. That's how it is. But while we have your attention, folks, please head on over to our website, milehighhockey.com, and give us a follow on your preferred socials. We're on X at all caps MHH_lab. And at Mile High Hockey. All right, who wants to go first? Jackie, I feel like you've earned to go first, but you've also earned to choose whether or not you have to go first. Do you want to wait?
I'm gonna say no. Because I know that this isn't gonna be an hours long me rant. So let's just see what the topics become, and then I will chime in.
Fair. All right, I love it. Because I was just wanting to make sure that I'm sure we all have plenty to say today, but that's totally fine. That's what we're here for. Then let's start with you, Mr. Ezra Parter.
Well,
I think that
real quick. Before we get started, I just want to say happy birthday, Peter McNabb.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Peter McNabb, Mr. Maxey. Thank you,
yes,
Brandon, for doing
Mr.
that. Happy
McNabb,
birthday,
happy
the legend.
Birthday.
He had some good things to say about this, and probably
I'm sure he would have had some great things to say about this. But sorry to interrupt, Ezra, but that needed to be said.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad that you did that. Thank you for doing that. Well, I like to think about what Mr. Peter McNabb might have to say about the current state of affairs and kind of the way things went in Game 7. I bet you, if I remember him correctly, and this is not to speak on his behalf, but my recollection, he would have been like, I feel it. When the Avs were up 2-0 and there was about 10 minutes left, he would have said, I feel like Dallas is about to make a push. And that's where I was at. Ezra, that push did in fact come through. It came through on the power play, and it came through in the form of none other than number 96 getting on the board to the tune of 4 points in the third period, which was the back-to-back games with a 4-point period. Where are you at right now, my friend?
I'm pretty disappointed. The Avs had it in hand, just like they had it in hand in game 2 and game 3, and they let it slip. And it's two very, very good teams going at each other, and things like that are bound to happen. But when they happen 3 times in one series, it's really hard to come away from it being overly optimistic. Which of course is my default setting. So I do still feel like, this team is strong, and God, I've been watching the other series, and especially the Eastern Conference series. I'm like, the Avs would have beat any of these teams. Like, there's not a team in the playoffs right now, except maybe Edmonton, that I really feel like could give the Avs a serious run. Edmonton only because while the rest of the team is playing well enough, McDavid and Draisaitl continue to elevate. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, man, this stupid matchup in the first round makes everything look worse. But really, this is a great team that lost to a great team.
Well, we talked a lot about the power play. We've talked a lot about the power play the whole time we've had this show. And as it turns out, the Avs do in fact move on from their assistant coach who's in charge of the power play. And thank you for your service, my friend. It worked when it worked, and it didn't when it didn't, and this time it didn't at the worst time. Brandon, we even saw, there was a game earlier in the series where the Avs took a 4-minute power play, ending the third and into the overtime period, and they were unable to cash in, and they were unable to secure a victory, which would have definitely changed at least the outcome in terms of when it ended, potentially. So what are your thoughts on the Game 7 also being 0-for-2 on the power play, and then, of course, Dallas actually executing on the power play and making the Avalanche pay?
Well, 3 for 22 in the series, so that ain't saying much.
That's not good,
yeah. And Ray Bennett's been the assistant coach for the Avalanche since 2017-18. How long he's been in charge of the power play, I don't remember, but it's gotten to the point that it was too predictable. I was talking to people at the Eagles games, and like even scouts were just like, it was to the point that you knew who it was going to, where it was going to, how many passes it was going to be. Where Dallas, it was pass, shoot, pass, shoot, pass, shoot. They would get 4 or 5 shots in 2 minutes. The Avalanche were lucky to get 1, if even that. So come on, that made the difference of the series. And in a 4-minute power play, you're not even getting a shot on goal. I want to use words that we shouldn't, but give me a
I'm right there
break.
with you, my friend. I am absolutely 100% there.
Break. So, I'm sitting in the box watching the Eagles games, and it's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
They're converting on the power play. And what do you know? They won their series.
Yeah.
So,
which congrats to the Eagles, by the way. That's awesome. Yeah, that says performing on special teams is super crucial.
And killing them. And killing the power plays.
Especially in the playoffs. And it's
exactly. I know it's not AHL is completely different, but still special teams is special for a reason.
We've talked about the stubborn nature of this team, especially in this first round against Dallas. We talked about kind of like how they were flip-flopping between styles, and I know how, like, obviously giving up a goal in 9 seconds in game 5 Game 5 is not ideal, and you can't really dictate much after something like that happens. I'll throw that one away. But they still kind of went back and forth, especially when it came to like even home and away, with what felt like being able to get pucks to the net. And I feel like that stubborn nature might be top to bottom right now in the whole organization. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I don't want it to be interpreted like, oh, he's saying they're stubborn, so they're not good at their jobs. No, I think sometimes you should stick to your guns. I think For instance, McFarland should stick to wanting to plug holes on an affordable and unexpected basis, i.e. Val Nichushkin, Arturi Lehkonen, these guys that, he brought in and everyone was kind of like, okay, we'll see, but they were all affordable and they all turned out to be great. That hasn't worked out as much as it did in the earlier window, and I think we're seeing that right now. But as it pertains to Game 7 in particular, what bothered me about how that game was played was I understand the approach that good offense is the best defense. But I remember that in 2022, when the Avs were up 2-1 against Tampa in Game 6 and clinched it, they came out in the third period and put on one of the best all-around defensive lockdown, defense-first oriented periods I'd ever seen from a team. And I think that needed to be in the bag somewhere, and I don't feel like it got deployed in the third period. I felt like they stayed on the gas. As much as I was the guy screaming, shoot, 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 they stayed on the gas, and Dallas was like, cool, go as fast as you want. We're just going to take advantage of our two opportunities. Any chance we get, we're going to take advantage of it. You guys can create all these other chances, whatever. And then because they know they have Otter. So that was the kicker for me. But Evan, I'm curious, how do you feel about Game 7? What do you see? And tell me your thoughts on Mikko pouring it on.
I'm still hurting, man.
Yeah.
Like it's we're here a week later. It's still killing me. On top of a great finals week up here for me. So
yeah, I think out of the three of us, Evan, you took it the worst.
The Rantanen part in particular, he made me look like such a fool because I said before the series, I don't think Rantanen's the same player without McKinnon, and he goes out and puts up 12 points in like 4 periods, whatever it was, something crazy like that. He's continued it now against Winnipeg too these last few games. He scored another freaking hat trick. So
yeah,
it just shows how much of a mistake it was to move on from him in the first place. Now, granted, we didn't know that he was going to go to Dallas. That's Carolina and Dallas's problem. But the fact that you even give that the opportunity to happen, I think is where it's kicking me the most. And I think that's where I'll probably address it later in my state of address, but I think that's where changes need to be made going forward because sure, I understand the concept of making it up in the aggregate. I understand that, but it didn't work. Like it just didn't work. You need star power, you need talent. And yes, you need depth too, because that's what helped them win the 2022 Stanley Cup. But
yeah, I
mean, I don't think the depth, regardless, was close to what they had in 22. So just a bummer.
Well, I don't want to get too far into that because I agree with you. We'll save some of this for the State of the Union. But the makeup for the aggregate thing I was on early. And my big thing about that was you're not in the – like that is a concept and a quote from Billy Beane, the famous general manager of, at the time, the Oakland A's, who lost – his 3 best players and said, I'm going to change my focus to on-base percentage, and I'm going to go get the best guys with the best on-base percentage, and that's going to win me games. It did. It didn't win the game, but it won them games, and games they shouldn't have won based on the fact that they had a way smaller budget than the teams they ended up going against in the playoffs. Therein lies the difference. The Avs have the same budget as everybody else in the league, and obviously theirs is different in terms of how they're spending their money, but they have the same bag to pull from. So it's not something where I feel like it was legitimized to say, because you could do that. AJ put a great analogy in one of the DNVR posts that I commented on, which was you can't get close to the paperclip again because the old I don't know, wise tale, I guess, about going from a paperclip to buying a house. And a true salesman can just trade up to that. Well, he's talking about trading back to the paperclip. And that's what it really felt like with Mikko Rantanen. We got a Marty Necas that was supposed to be at a minimum close to as good. And he might have been that. But then, you're really only netting Jack Drury. And so if this is about a 4C, you could have easily got that to me at the trade deadline. Sure, you get Marty Necas, but you keep Mikko. Does that make sense to anyone? I'm getting a few scowls.
Well, it's not netting Jack Drury. It's netting Jack Drury and cap space to get Ryan Lindgren
$1 million
and Brock Nelson. I mean, yes, but like the goal of the move was to shore up the depth. It wasn't to say, well, Nelson and Drury can make up what we're losing with Rantanen. That would be a stupid mathematical, fallacy, whatever. But the I feel like the whole thing with Rantanen, and I would much rather he was in an Avalanche uniform. I'll just preface with that. But the logic that I see with what they're doing is we can't afford to build a roster around 3 players that are going to make $40 million combined once Makar and Rantanen and McKinnon are all at the top of what they're going to get paid. And still fill out a roster with players that are decent from lines 2 through 4 and bottom of the defense pair, the bottom pairing defenders. And I think that's probably pretty sound logic. We haven't seen teams that with a pay scale like that win. It just hasn't happened. So could it happen? I don't know. Maybe because the Avs had Makar and Rantanen and McKinnon, they were going to break that rule. But it is generally true that those teams don't win. So, it might happen this year with Toronto. We'll see. But
I understand.
Okay, this is where I'll jump in.
All right, Jackie.
So I see two big problems with that. One, I agree on the surface that's a fair strategy, but there's 2 main problems with that. One, you as an organization are not set up for that. You have continued to not play that way, to build your roster that way. If you're going to be we are a depth team and we're going to make up for it in the aggregate, which I think McFarland actually literally said,
yes,
you have to plan for it. You have to take development seriously. That doesn't mean that you have a 100% homegrown team. It means that you can realistically fill 2 or 3 slots internally with cheaper contracts. It's the way you approach the thinking of building a roster. You just don't decide that in January. We're going to be a depth team and we're going to build this team with more cost-effective pieces. Not when you are in a season where Rantanen was top 3 in the league in time on ice. We know how Bennett runs. He loves to run his top line into the ground. All these things where how were they exactly going to do this? Now we're a depth team. Now we're doing 4 quarters for $1, and the Avs are going to run that way. The Avs have been at the top of the league because they were leaning on their 3 superstars. And if that's not feasible financially anymore, you have to plan for that. You have to look in the future. You don't decide that you can't afford to keep a huge piece like Rantanen within a matter of months. That's something you decide years ago. That's something that you plan for. That's something you forecast ahead. Who can take those minutes? Who can make up with those points? And the other thing is, then you don't have the deadline that you had, where you use every single asset that's left for rentals. If you are in we are now a depth organization perspective, you hold on to those assets because you need them to play on your team, and you need them to at least get players that are going to be around for longer than 59 days.
Yep.
Sorry for laughing. It's just that, the Avs had 15 freaking trades on the team at the end of the year. So
well, that's a problem. That's another problem. That doesn't even get into like the roster construction problem.
Yeah.
That's in the team cohesion problem. That's in you actually thought this team was going to come together and do something special.
But what kind of sucks is you almost have to say, well, I feel like you knew this was coming, Jackie. But you almost have to say, well, give them a camp. You know what I mean? Because they didn't get one, and they got 2.5 months of time in the system. So all of the guys that played here this season, that were brought in here this season, namely Brock Nelson, which is a great segue. Let's start getting into that conversation. You look at that person in particular, that pending contract in particular, and you go, what's making him want to stay? What's other than
that's a great question. I know that the narrative is the Avs are just so revered that anybody should be thankful that the Avs want you to be on your team. But he was relegated to a lesser role in the playoffs. He barely got any power play time. didn't score a goal, wasn't on the penalty kill, and why? Why would he be like, yes, this is absolutely the place that I want to spend the rest of my career?
Yeah.
Because he's on a team that gave up 12 shots through 2 periods in a game 7 that was like one better. I don't want to say better bounce because they did not earn a better bounce in the third period, but truly like one better break in the third period from moving on and being probably the national consensus cup pick and going.
I mean, that would be that's insane that they be the national consensus cup pick.
I mean,
well, they were the national consensus to win that series, and they didn't. So.
Yeah, national consensuses are often wrong, but my point is just this team, like, I don't agree that they need a camp. They were so good. They were so good.
But at the end of the day, they weren't good enough. They weren't good enough to beat. As Nate put it, they weren't good enough to beat Dallas without their best forward and without their best defender.
And then so what? They beat Dallas. I get it. They were in game 7. They could have, right? They were close, but
they were supposed to.
But the thing is, even if they went out in round 2, we'd be having the exact same discussion.
They wouldn't.
Like going out in round 2 wouldn't have been good enough either.
I don't know if I would, but like, here's the thing. I said too, like, to me, you couldn't have conjured or thought up a worse way for the Avalanche to be eliminated from this season. It's in the first round. It's to Dallas, a storied Avs killer. In every great era of Avalanche hockey, the Dallas Stars have said, no, we're good. You guys are going home. And so like, it was just so bad that I think I tried to wait for my emotions to subside. And unfortunately, as I did that, Mikko Rantanen went and had a hat trick the next game again. So
I mean,
it's just so hard right now to have a measured and level view of this team because it's so bitter. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I see where you're coming from, but I disagree fundamentally because I'm with Jackie in the sense that if you're a player, if you think you're a team that can win the cup right now, you never trade Mikko Rantanen. That's crazy. You're trying to bring a guy like Mikko Rantanen in to solidify that feeling. They traded Matt Duchene because he wanted to leave. But that's a totally different situation. I feel like he wanted to kind of do that same thing, but the difference is like Matt Duchene, a great player, a ageless wonder. He's not Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen is a top 5 player of this era. And you do not let guys like that go. And I think maybe we should just go straight to the State of the Unions and because it's already going there so much. Let's just do it.
First off, real quick, Devontae's did an interview yesterday. It was with Donnie and Dolly, I think is how you say that. But he did an interview yesterday, and he even said, he's like, this was a Western Conference final. And it's so hard to get out of the first round because we're playing the same teams over and over and over again.
But they
played Seattle.
They've had a lot of very.
Well, Seattle's the exception. Yeah. But he's
what Seattle did? They tried to make it up in the aggregate. They had.
I mean, it's great that they believed that. I mean, of course, the players need to believe they're that good.
They had 20 goal scorers or whatever. That's kind of.
But they didn't have McKinnon and Makar. It's a completely different.
That doesn't win you the cup.
But that's why I'm saying that's a conflict. Those are conflicting ideas. That is my frustration. Is that you got Nathan McKinnon and you got Cale Makar, so you're always in a window when that happens. Well, when you're in a window, you don't trade your third best player.
Right. I hear you. But I think, and again, I'll say this again. I would have rather they kept him. But I'm trying to figure out their logic. And their logic, it seems to me, is we have the top end, but we don't have support from the rest of the roster.
Well,
we have to make a move to change that. You're not going to move McKinnon. You're not going to move Makar. Rantanen's on an expiring contract that you don't want to pay.
Sure.
To your credit.
Well, then you need to, as an organization, have a plan.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think they did.
Yeah. Well, to your credit,
the plan was let's go get a loaded roster for this year, make a team that can dominate games, and it didn't work. But it was a great team.
Well,
it
like
wasn't a
done
great
this
team.
year. They'll
Just
be back
because
next year.
you win TSN headlines because you spent the most and you made the most moves and you're called a genius doesn't make you a great team.
I don't think that was the goal. I think the goal.
But
was
that's
to-
why they were considered. That's why they were overrated. That's why they were so hyped. People love moves. People love action. It doesn't matter
think-
if they're good or not, or worth it or not, or even getting a player that's even that good, or that's
I don't
going
want
to
to
move
suck
the
up all the
needle
air in this
or make a
argument. So
difference.
I'll back off after this. But I just think if you watch every team in the playoffs, you come away with there are like 4 teams that could actually win the cup, and Colorado was absolutely one of them.
They absolutely were not.
I don't know how you watch that game and think that. I don't get it at all.
Well, I mean, they're out in the first round.
Because
know
they
it's
didn't have the
Dallas.
talent.
It was
Nobody
Dallas
was
that
that
was not.
good.
It was a shadow of Dallas. If we played the real Dallas, if we played Miro Heiskanen and Robo Dallas, they would have got
would've been
eliminated
very
in 5
similar.
games.
No.
I mean,
Oh my
just
God.
hanging your hat on like some empty possession. I mean, yes,
Evan and Brandon are like
that
oh, shit.
there's analytics matter to a point. It doesn't tell everything.
Well,
And
I was
hanging
gonna
your hat
say-
on just some
I watch
empty
the
analytics
games, man. I
when
don't
all
know
the
what to
guys
tell
that
you.
you brought in were bottom 5 on this team in analytics.
Yeah. No, Nelson's a problem.
playoffs.
Nelson's a problem. I don't want him back. But and that trade is an absolute loss. But overall,
They
that's
weren't good
and the
enough.
one
Really
before it, and the one before it. So it's a double loss because you lost Bowen Byram, and then you lost what you got for Bowen Byram, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you trade Bowen Byram for Nelson straight up. They probably ask for something in addition to that too. You know,
That's
so it's
insane.
not really.
That's insane. He's
I
a
don't know.
pending UFA.
Yeah,
I just mean like the net
I
values of these players is roughly
Sure.
the same.
I
No.
think to Ezra's credit, like if anyone knows about like the downfalls of a top heavy team, it's Joe Sakic. And if anyone knows that pain against anyone, it's the Dallas Stars and it's Joe Sakic because he had teams inside of Colorado's golden era where they only had 2 pucks in 2 cups. In the middle of those 2 cups, he did have teams that were similarly built in terms of their top heaviness. And they all got eliminated in the Western Conference Final by a deeper team. So like I get that's why like I don't want to poo-poo the fact that that's the thinking. I just think that you can't if that is the thinking, you have to do it in a way the ways you used to. It's not by leveraging your great assets. It's by finding value under rocks that other people aren't willing to look under. And if you can't successfully do that, you have to take your L. You can't just keep patching, making a bad determination. You believe in yourself because you got Val Nichushkin and you got, Jonathan Drouin, who's had a decent time here in Colorado. It didn't work out in this playoff round, that's for sure. Maybe he really isn't a playoff type hockey player. That's interesting. We'll talk about that too in the future. But it's like my whole thing is it's like you can't have those conflicting ideas going on at the same time. You either are a team that's close or you're a team that's leveraging your asset. You basically tried to rebuild inside of the same time where you're saying you're going to go win a cup. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that being simultaneous thinking. That's kind of all I'm saying. But Brendan and Evan, you guys have been polite and quiet down there. Brandon, where are you at? Let's just hear your State of the Union and your final thoughts on the 2024-25 season. You have the floor.
What do you want me to say for my State of the Union? Wait, they suck? I mean,
No.
the expectations were high, but they're always going to be from now on with McKinnon and Cale Makar. You need to lower your expectations a little bit, make the bar easier to jump over. This is, coming from someone who played themselves, not competitively, but set the bar low, build from there. You know what's coming. The draft is not going to be full of a lot of picks. So be expecting a lot of UFAs to be signed and a lot of college UFAs to be signed. So it's going to be a rough year or two for the next couple years. And you guys don't freak out. Please don't freak out.
I can see Ezra already conceptualizing the clips he's going to make a year
And
from now. If the Avs are good.
don't call for heads to roll. My editor.
Yeah.
My side.
Oh, that's all right. Well, there's your State of the Union. Those are your final thoughts on the 2024-25 season, Brennan. Thank you for your participation in our program this season. You've brought a lot to the table, and I'm happy we've had the privilege of adding you to our panel this season. So, Evan, now your fellow Hockey Mountain High gentleman just called you out a little bit. Let's hear a response to that, and let's get your State of the Union and your final thoughts on the 2024-25 season.
I think, like, just sitting back and hearing this conversation, like, everyone's got their opinions, right? This is a very emotional time. This is a very dividing time. If you're an Avalanche fan, there's a lot going on both. Pick a side, right? And I know Brennan just called me out, but I'm sticking to my guns. I think you have to get rid of Chris McFarland. This is not just because of a this year thing. This has been accumulation of things after 2022. Sure, he's made some moves that have worked out, right? We've known that he's kind of been the de facto GM, even when Joe Sakic was the GM. He was the one that was making the moves that led to the 2022 Cup run, but Joe Sakic was right there. That's still the case now, but you just look at, like, almost everything has backfired. Mikko Rantanen, of course, we've kicked that horse enough. Like, there's no need to make that wound worse. Yeah. The Brock Nelson trade, terrible. You lose a guy who I think was 1 year, maybe 2 years out from the league, who you could have, brought up again. It helps you stay a little bit cheaper, and you saw the potential, and you saw what Cal Ritchie did in the OHL this year, like, insane. And now he's gone. Look at the Charlie Coyle trade. Sure, he looked good to end the year, but in the playoffs, he was completely gone. And you lose another pick, another prospect that's just continuing to drain your system. Lars Eller, that's one we touch on a lot, right? That trade did not work out well either. And this is just something that you have to take into consideration when you're running a club, an organization. Like, this can't just be like NHL, franchise where you say, F them picks, just give me everything. Because it's a video game. It doesn't matter. There's no real life implications. Here, there is. And you can see the emotion that it brings people, right? Not just in this panel, but even outside this panel, this entire fan, organization, right? And it just hasn't worked out for McFarland. So I think it's time for him to go. And I also say that because look at what happened on the other side of the building at Ball Arena. Calvin Booth, the Denver Nuggets, gone. Michael Malone, coach, gone. Yeah. I don't even know basketball that well, and I knew how shattering that was. Like, and that was a week before the playoffs started. It's short. And look, the Nuggets now. They stole game one in Oklahoma City. I've turned into a Nuggets fan. I don't even care about basketball that much, but they're the ones that are really giving me the hope right now. Mm-hmm. So if they can do that on the other side of the building, I could see them doing the same, at least on the Avalanche side. I don't think they're going to get rid of Jared Bednar. I don't think they should get rid of Jared Bednar. Yeah. I think they got rid of what was, I guess, quote unquote, a root problem with Ray Bennett in the power play. So now you have to see what that looks like going into next year. But I guess I'll end with this because it's winded and I'm losing my breath. This is still a good hockey team. You still have Nathan McKinnon. You still have Cale Makar. You now have a healthy Gabriel Landeskog, all things considered. It sounds like that he's going to be all right going into next year, which is great. It truly, truly sucks that we could not keep this Landeskog comeback longer than 5 games or whatever. And I guess that's another reason why, too, that you could see McFarland going, because he was out there on the ice for game 2. You could have played him. If he was ready to go, you should have played him. And maybe that makes a difference in that game. I don't know whose decision that is, whether it's coach's decision, management decision, whatever. I just don't like that decision at all. So I guess back to what I was saying, this is still a good hockey team. They are still going to compete. I still think that they are going to make playoffs for the next few years. But are they a great team where I think they could win the cup in the coming years? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a tough pill to swallow. And like I said, I think if they want to get to that point, changes have to come.
Beautiful. Evan says, that's my point, and I'm sticking to it. And you know what? I got to respect that, Evan, because like you're right. You said it earlier, like it's an emotional time. And I'll do mine, and then I'm actually going to give the final word to Ezra because he feels like the most optimistic one today.
Jackie
he's gonna
technically hasn't given hers.
She's gonna after me. That's what I'm saying. It'll go me, Jackie, then Ezra, because I feel like I want to end with a little bit of optimism because that's just how I roll. You guys know me. Yeah, I know, right? Well, it's like you guys know me. I'm also an eternal optimist. Every move that they make, when I don't necessarily see it, I just tell myself, okay, well, McFarland and Sakic know what they're doing. I trust them. I will say this, though, right now. I won't call for anyone's job, but I am going to call for a little bit of accountability and an adjustment. I know that I'm screaming trade for Crosby every trade deadline, but up to
Brad Marchand.
Yeah, there you go. But I want to say, like, chill out. Sit there, take your L, get your picks back over the years. If if Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar are that good, you can fill this roster affordably and build it the right way you did in 2022. Because let us not forget, sure, you sucked to earn these guys, but you drafted and developed Nathan McKinnon. You drafted and developed Mikko Rantanen. You drafted and you developed Gabriel Landeskog. That is how the core was built. It was not built by leveraging your assets for a new shiny toy that can skate just as fast as Nathan McKinnon. There needs to be a level of accountability, and Chris McFarland needs to say to himself, I can't fix this right now. This is not a fixable right now thing. To Evan's credit, I see this as a full picture of really bad moves. And they're all reactionary in these last couple years to earlier bad moves. And that is when you start to snowball and really give up your assets. I will give him credit for getting the goalie room sorted. That was a thing of magic. That was magic. I will say, though, you got Natchez dangled in front of you, and Carolina said now or never, and you could have said, I call your bluff. I'm going to wait till the deadline. You would have known that Landeskog potentially was coming back. You'd have looked at your top six in a completely different way. Now, beyond that, even so, is you let go of Ray Bennett in response. You scapegoat the power play, but the power play has been an issue for years. It's been an issue for years in the playoffs. So you basically say, let's mix up the power play by trading our most productive power play player. Let's go win in the playoffs and win a Stanley Cup by trading our most productive playoff offensive performer to the tune of 1.5 points per game in over 80 playoff games. That's more, just so you know, than Nathan McKinnon, who I was beat over the head with because I thought Mikko Rantanen should make more than Nathan McKinnon. Well, to me, you have to see the proof in that pudding. So my final thought on 24-25 is let that be a lesson. That it's not going to come like an NHL 25 GM mode season. It's going to come the long and hard suffering way. And let this be the beginning of the movie, not the end of the tragedy. Make an adjustment, build your team like a big boy. Jackie, the floor is yours.
Oh, gee, where to begin? Well, the thing with this team is that we definitely saw moments. They won a lot of games. They won 49 games. We saw them beat up on especially a lot of bad teams, score a lot of goals. But the thing is the difference between good and great. And often that's the toughest step. And it's the most frustrating because you're close. It looks like you're close. You're doing great things, but you just don't do them consistently. And you don't do them consistently against good teams. That was the warning during the regular season. They would struggle about every so often against good teams. They struggled to create offense. They struggled to produce at 5-on-5. And that was going to continue in the playoffs, which is why I get it's frustrating. They were in Game 7. They were playing a really good Dallas team. They were right there. But the notion that if they had got past that, it would have been smooth sailing. To me is crazy. Like, it is so hard to win in this league against any team consistently, game after game, round after round, until you reach the end of the mountain and you win the Stanley Cup. And that's the difference. They're not a great team anymore. They're a good team. And I think that's where the frustration lies. Because no, they're not terrible. They have Nathan McKinnon. They have Cale Makar. With those two and having healthy seasons for the next several years, they probably will make the playoffs. But that's the funny thing, is to chase after a team that probably will make the playoffs anyway. And the difference between if they had done nothing and made the playoffs and what they did and how they were in the playoffs is probably very minimal. So what was it worth? And so that's what they need to recognize. And the problem that I have is it reminds where this franchise is. I think they're becoming delusional. And that's very reminiscent of where this franchise was before the 16-17 season, where they weren't good. They were buying every deadline, trying to chase. And I think this is where they're falling back into. They're starting to chase, and what they're going to do is chase mediocrity. They're not going to be in a position to get those picks where they got McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar, Landeskog. Those are top 10 picks, never played in the AHL except for Mikko one year. They didn't have to develop them. They didn't have to have them in the minors waiting for 3 or 4 years. It was instant gratification when they drafted these players. They were able to use them right away. This avenue will not be available to the Avs. How they built the 22 team was through a lot of those RFA deals. They had Nathan McKinnon making $6 million. They had cap space. They had assets. They didn't even trade a first-round pick in 2022 at the deadline. They had enough assets where, yes, they did take some from the future, but they didn't take all. And they were able to bring those players in that other teams undervalued. Remember, they had to give Lehkonen a decent contract. Taves, Burakovsky, these players were all paid more than their original teams were willing to pay them. And that's why the Avs were able to build that way. They built a great team. I will never take away from that 2022 team. They were a fantastic team. But they're not going to be able to build that way again. And they have absolutely no strategy of how to get back there. So firing McFarland would just be a figurehead move. If they want real change, they need to change the entire organization. They need to change philosophies. They need to believe again in assets, in drafting, in depth, in creating your own depth. They need to cut out their ridiculous delusions, the way they treat the media, the fans, their arrogance. All of that needs to go. If they want to have a fresh start and to really build something again while they can. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. So, like I said, enjoy your path to mediocrity until this organization gets a clue and gets out of the delusions. That's basically where they're headed.
Yeah, that was like a triple whammy of just angst. It's like I feels like a punk concert in here, but like in a bad way. So
It sounded bad when you said it the first. I'm just kidding. Punk's
I
fun.
know. Well,
Punk's fun. Who am I?
Punk is fun. It looks like a T-shirt that someone says.
Wearing my like Tommy Bahama bullshit shirt.
All right, Ezra. Well, I think we've gotten a healthy dose of the upset here, and you seem to be gracing us with optimism since the first second of this beautiful program. And I wanna hear what you have to say, because most of the time I'm right with you in terms of that, and this is one of the seldom times I'm not. So bring me back, baby. I want to come back.
Yeah, I mean, they'll never win until they hire Jackie. I don't know what to say. No, I think you look at what Jackie's saying, and I don't disagree with most of it, except for the part about it being impossible for this to succeed. Because I feel like, yeah, a lot of the trades that were made were win now trades that sacrifice the future, but that's kind of the life cycle of a sports team, and that's how things go. The reality is the 2022 team was built because they had good deals at the top, so they were able to supplement the rest of the roster with with good deals for mid-tier players. The way the roster was constructed going into this season, they could not do that. So instead of paying one of the top players the top money, they moved him out so they could try to do that again. I think that's the plan, and I believe in it. They did it once. They can do it again. Now, obviously, it's a different situation, different age, different cap, different contracts on the books, right? But the truth is, if they're going to build a team like the 2022 team, they have to have money for the middle of the roster, and the only way to achieve that was to move one of the pieces that's getting paid a ton at the top of the roster. So to me, I see this Rantanen move as one that hurts, that I don't like, that I'd rather he was on the team. But I get the logic of it. If you're going to build a team like 2022, this is the only opportunity to do it.
Mhm.
And, you know, you could say instead of trying to recapture that magic, pivot and try to make a different philosophy for your future. I hear that. I do. But they're not going to magically start drafting players. Even if they hoarded all the picks for the next draft, they're not going to have players ready to help next year. That's just not going to happen. And you have a cup window with McKinnon and Makar in their primes. You have to try to capitalize on it and not worry so much about the future. Next year, no, it's my turn. Next year, the year after that, they don't have draft picks in the top 100, but frankly, they do the year after that. Let's trade those too. And then, yeah, when all this is over and you have a ton of old players on your roster who there's not a lot and there's no prospects for the future, trade them for picks, restock. You know, it's the cycle of sports. I'm not worried about it. I think that this team has what it takes throughout the lineup right now to be a very serious contender, and they were this season. It didn't work. But man, they looked good. They have to make the right decisions this offseason to do it again. Yeah. For me, that's move on from a guy like Nelson, who wasn't quite a fit, but you know, maybe with a training camp, like we said earlier, he could be a better fit. I don't think it, but if they do bring him back, that's why, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. I don't think anybody should lose their jobs for doing the best they can to turn this roster this season into a cup contender, even though it didn't work.
I will have nightmares about how close Sam Girard was to getting that puck out. And that's to your credit.
Mackenzie Blackwood wasn't close enough into the net.
Yeah, I hear you. But I mean, like, I just want to illustrate the fact that this was a pretty razor thin margin in this series, although it hurt. So I think it doesn't feel like that because of number 96 being the one who poured it on. And that is like that, like I part of me felt bad for McFarland, but a part of me was like, come on, dude, like sit up. But like he was in that press conference while Sakic was there boss dogging it and answering every question.
Was the saddest
and he was kind of just like, it looked almost like Sakic was his lawyer and McFarland was like the accused. And I was like Chris, like sit up, like say it with your chest and just be like, dude.
Never sat up straight though.
I know. I'm not saying like
the tone and the vibe.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't mean like
so
they just lost. Yeah. They were sad.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen McFarland sit up straight like in a press conference.
I'm not saying like literally. I just mean like
that's just a normal
and
McFarland
it was so
thing.
Delusional.
Figuratively speaking, like Evan did when you said, you know, you called for McFarland's job. Evan sat up and he said, "All right, it's my turn to tell you why I think that." And I feel like to me it was like he was like, "Oh yeah, like Joe put it best. Joe kept saying this," and I was like, "Man, I just want you to sit up there and say like, maybe I made a mistake, but it is where we are now, and we have no choice. There's no going back. The only choice we have now is to move on and do this the right way going forward." I honestly don't know if anyone's ever done that in sports, but I think that this would have been maybe a time to do that. Brendan, what's up?
Jim Rutherford did it. I mean, that's a whole different thing though than Cooper.
Yeah. I mean, when you go, the truth, what all in means is you go all in, you go bust, you walk away from the table. That's what all in is.
Yeah.
And I mean, the one thing I think McFarland handled very well was the questions about Landeskog and why even play him and things like that. And he answered it exactly like I thought he would. And it was to get those darn questions out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach the summer? Do we have $7 million to actually that's freed up during the summer or not? Because how many summers, 3 summers have we gone into that we've had 7 million just sitting on the table that we don't know that we can't use.
Mhm.
So the fact that we played and everyone listening right now, stop it with the Landeskog. Oh, he shouldn't have played during the playoffs. Stop it.
He was one of their best players, guys.
I truly haven't heard anybody say the Landeskog
I've
shouldn't have
seen
played.
it all over the place. And the fact is that he answered so many questions by playing in just 5 games, 7 if you include the
Oh my
AHL.
God, yeah.
But just 5 games and then having 5 points?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
4 or 5, yeah.
And then he was up to 20 minutes in ice time, but he answered the question, how much cap do we have to play with? And that has been the biggest question that we've had every freaking summer.
And I think he
Beautiful.
answered the question of, is he going to be able to be a top 6 player or a bottom 6 player as well? Which
And
is
I
important.
think, yes, and I think he will be a top 6 player still.
Yeah,
I do.
I agree.
I do too.
I know we didn't want to do too much with we don't, the numbers don't say everything, but I do want to point out one important number that I think kind of illustrates a little bit on the power play in the playoffs. Colorado generated almost 5 expected goals. They didn't score any. They scored a couple, but like that doesn't matter. But they shot 0% on their high danger chances. That doesn't happen. You know, it happens in a small sample size, but it doesn't happen over the course of a season or a whole playoff. So
the problem was that Makar was shooting 20% on the power play in the regular season. Yeah. So when you see a regression like that coming, yeah, it sucks. It comes at the wrong time, but that's
you know
part
what
of why things like that happen is they
was
were riding a high shooting percentage on the power play in the regular season. And I even cautioned that some of these guys shooting high it's going to dry up, and it's going to dry up at the wrong time.
Yeah, I think, Jackie, you've been saying that all season.
Yeah.
Literally all season. Anyone
which makes it harder to believe, you know, but you were right.
Anyone who starts getting a high shooting percentage, you're just like, watch out, it's gonna drop.
And then you take Rantanen off the power play, who's their statistically best shooter, and then there's more pressure on Makar.
Yep, especially when you think about the structure of the power play, how it was basically a big triangle, and when you don't have to lean to Mikko, you take away some of Kale's danger, right?
And you don't use the guy who scored 7 power play goals in one series last year.
Yeah.
I don't know what Nichushkin was doing on Unit 2. It doesn't make any sense.
Me either. I don't know why Nichushkin and why 13 and 29 ever were not on the ice together. I have no idea.
Get it at all. I have
no idea.
I don't get it at all.
Yeah.
Evan,
what you got?
I was gonna say, I feel like we hit a good turning point with the Landeskog bit, because I know I said like it truly sucks that he only got 5 games. That this comeback tour didn't
begin
end well.
Yeah,
but I feel like it's a good segue into next year and trying to figure out like how this is going to work next year.
That's why I said this be the beginning of the movie.
So here's where my head is at with like a lineup right now, I guess, because the Avalanche, I have cap wages pulled up on my phone here. The Avalanche are currently, what was that number? 6 million over the cap, right? Yeah. And that's including, Nelson, all the UFAs that are probably not coming back, right? So the UFAs include Brock Nelson, Drouin, Jimmy VC, and Yoel Kiviranta.
Lindgren, Eric Johnson.
And, those are forwards, and then the defenders, Lindgren, Johnson, and then Sam Malinsky's an RFA. Yes. So, I mean, out of that list, maybe you all can give picks here, but I feel like Nelson's probably not coming back. Drouin, I don't think is coming back, which sucks, but I don't see that happening. And you have to think about the money here in particular, right? Like,
the only way Drouin comes back is if he takes a heavy discount.
Yeah,
he was injured like half the season.
It's the only way.
Could
to
happen.
I feel like this is gonna suck when I say this. I feel like Jimmy VC is gonna stay just because he's cheap. You can.
What about Kiviranta?
He was making less than a mil.
Kiviranta can stay on a pretty affordable basis.
Yeah,
he scored 16 goals.
Yeah,
they're gonna try to cash in.
Yeah,
he will.
Oh, that's true. his
I'll
representation.
admit, I do think Ryan Lindgren will try and stay. What's his cap hit right now? Actually, 2.25.
That's why VC could be a nice.
It was 5.
easy
It was
replacement.
4.5. They just retained on it, didn't they?
I
So
think you're
I
right,
just-
Jackie.
I just popped into Grok and I said, give me a table of all the Avs expiring contracts, UFAs and RFAs, and it also gave me a likelihood of re-signing. And they pulled this data from previous re-signings in the past and retention. And Brock Nelson, low chance of re-signing. Drouin, medium chance of re-signing. Kiviranta, VC, low. Lindgren, Eric Johnson, Tucker Pullman, very low. Parker Kelly and Sam Alinsky, high, obviously, because they're RFAs, right? So
No, Kelly's
but-
already signed.
Yeah, Kelly's
Yeah.
signed.
Parker
So
Kelly
he's here,
Signed.
unfortunately.
yeah, so
Or you
high,
guaranteed
high
to
as
get a
in
cap
high
wage.
as
Guaranteed
in
to
signed.
sign.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'll say this, like I said, Evan, you're totally right. Like, let this be the beginning of the movie. Like, we also know that in 2022, it took some heartache to learn the lessons it took to get beyond the hump and to go win that cup. And this could be one of the saltiest, most disgusting lessons that the Avalanche get, but it has to be that. It has to be something that they learn from. Because it's not, they were not the victim. I said it in the build up to Game 7. You're not going to win this series playing the victim. You are in control of your own fate. You made your choices and you have to live in the bed that you made. So now, here we are. And let us ride into the future with Ezra's optimism. We're going to do what we do anyway, so we might as well make it at least enjoyable. Well, I'm really appreciative to the four of you for joining me. This has been a great season. I think this has been our best season as a program. So congratulations to the four of you. I've had a ton of fun. I think we've brought a lot of great content to the Avs community. And we are very much in debt to that Avalanche community. There are 251 of you watching live in the off season when it hurts the most to watch Avalanche related things. So thank you to the 251 of you. Yeah, so it's been a tough season as we sit today, but it's been a great season if you look at it overall. And from my point of view, as to getting to work with the four of you and those other folks who've joined us on the program. So thank you, and head on over to the website, milehighhockey.com. We'll have your off-season coverage. We will just get right back to it because that's what we do here in Avs country. And be sure to follow all of my esteemed colleagues here, and their tags are under their names here. Make sure you give Hockey Mountain High a quick follow as well. And, we'll see you next year, but we're going to start doing some cool programming. I have an idea called the Chronicles, where we're going to chronologically follow some pretty explosive trades. I'm going to start with the most explosive one, I think, in history, which is Patrick Waugh. And then I'm going to go to the second most explosive, which I think happened this season. So be on the lookout for those chronologicals. I'm going to pre-record those and make them kind of documentary style, but they will be broadcasted live in the offseason. So keep your heads up and be on the lookout for that. And of course, go to our full catalog on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Go back and listen to some of the crazy things I said. And also listen to how right Jackie has been all season. And we love you. Until next time, I'm Adrian Hernandez. On behalf of Ezra Parter, Jackie K, Brennan Vogt, and Evan Liu, go Avalanche.
Thank you for tuning into the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Brad Marchand.
Go
He
Eagles.
scored a goal in the second round.
Smoke them if you got them, baby. I love it. Adios.